afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're doing well. Welcome to another Aquarium Online Academy with me, Jen. And joining me today is Carrie and our eel, who clearly wants to be famous. It's like, hello, don't forget about me. I'm here. We should probably just do a class all about eels. Wouldn't that be exciting? I think this eel most definitely agrees. Oh my goodness. This is absolutely glorious. But our class today is on whales, which is equally exciting as some might believe, such as myself. Though personally, I am more of an algae kind of gal, and we'll actually talk a little bit about how algae, microscopic varieties actually, and whales get along, or maybe in some cases don't. But joining me in the studio today, I digress, is Carrie, who's doing all the lovely visuals back here. Carrie, thank you for our lovely eel. And then we also have Kaya that's helping out with the questions. All right, so talking about questions, if any of you do happen to have questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at the number below, 562-286-1838. And if you happen to be watching this on Wednesday, July 1st, after 1 or 1:30 p.m., probably after 1:30 p.m., because we'll still be streaming live otherwise, go on ahead and send us an email at live@lbaop.org. All right, so here's a lovely view of one of our giant sea bass, but our goal today is to talk a little bit about whales. Now, whales are actually a type of marine mammal. So if we break it down, marine, they live in the water. They actually get a lot of their food, or most or all of their food, from the ocean itself. So we got the marine part down. Now, what about mammal? If you've watched some of our previous whale shows, you may have had a chance to remember some of those marine mammal characteristics. Well, there are 5 of them. See if you can maybe think about what some of them might be. We have a little bit of a clue right behind me. What do you think? Well, looks like, whoops, the other side, they go on ahead and they're able to breathe air. So that is one of the characteristics. They are warm-blooded, much like you or me. So they have nice warm blood. They don't need to warm up like reptiles. If you joined us earlier for our turtle Aquarium Online Academy that we had then. So we know they're warm-blooded. They breathe air. Well, most mammals give live birth. So do our whales. Let's see. They have a backbone like you and I do. So if you caught mine or Stacy's program earlier, right, that bone that kind of goes up and down on the very back, that's your backbone. And let's see, and they also drink milk, right? And so those are the 5 things that make a mammal a mammal. So with that, our goal today is to delve in a little bit deeper. And there are lots of marine mammals, right? There's seals, there's sea lions, there are otters, there are walruses, but there are also whales. And if we go on ahead and we break down whales, they come into 2 main flavors. We have those that have teeth. And then we also have, and they have hair. Silly me, I forgot that too. They have hair. Thank you, Kaya. Thank you, viewers, for remembering that. Backbone is one that we all have, but hair is definitely the main one. And our whales actually have hair too. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So with that, we have 2 different whale varieties. We have those that have teeth and those that have something called baleen. And here's a great picture of some baleen. And I happen to have some that we can check out together. It's actually right here. The same kind. Now, this baleen is actually from a gray whale. And so, well, if we have 2 kinds, tooth and baleen, any guesses to generally what baleen whales might eat? Well, doesn't actually look like big teeth, right? Well, looks like there's lots and lots of rows. If you said they eat small things like krill or plankton, yeah. So these are more filter-feeding animals. This is our toothed whale, right? I have, I think it's a sperm whale tooth right here, right? Just to kind of compare the 2. This tooth right here is of a sperm whale. So what do you think it might eat with such a big tooth? Yeah, maybe some squid, right? So some larger actual animals there. And it all depends on the whale. And our goal today is to talk a little bit about the different feeding of the different whales. We're going to be starting by focusing on the ones that kind of live and do a lot of their life up at the very top of the water. And then we're going to continue on down the layers, and then we're going to do some of our deeper whales as well. We're going to mix and match up with a little bit between some toothed and baleen whales. But now we talked about the differences of baleen versus their teeth. Are there any other differences? Now it's hard to tell with this picture. Maybe if we could go back to our blue whale picture that we had a little bit ago. I'm going to put my teeth and my baleen down. Now here within our picture is another clue. Remember how we talked about how marine mammals need air to be able to breathe, or mammals in general? Well, that right there is a blowhole. So this is where they're able to breathe and take their breaths right up at the surface. Now, baleen whales have two blowholes, and they're able to, suck in air, and they're able to release that air using those two right there. Now, what's pretty cool is that when you are out on a boat looking out and trying to identify whales, one way that you can identify some baleen whales is by the blowhole and the way that they blow, the mist that kind of comes up. Now, so baleen whales have those two blowholes, but believe it or not, toothed whales, like many dolphins, they only have one blowhole. You're like, well, why is that? Any thoughts to why that might be? Well, let me grab a replica of a dolphin skull for you, and let's chat about it. So, here we have our toothed whale, right? Here's our dolphin skull. And right here would actually be those two blowholes. The same two blowholes as what we see on our blue whale right here. But what's pretty incredible for toothed whales like dolphins is they will use one blowhole to be able to breathe and exchange air that way. But the other blowhole is used for something called echolocation. So if you're familiar with maybe like how bats might use sound to be able to figure out where they are and to hunt because they have poor eyesight, well, same thing for these dolphin here. They also use that almost like animal sonar to be able to locate the fish and locate their environment as well. So they're able to use one, and there's a little kind of like a jello melon that sits on top. And what they do is they're able to project a sound out, and then it hits maybe, an underwater rock, or maybe hits the fish, and then they're able to pick that noise up in their lower jaw that connects to their ear bone right down here. And so that's how they're able to pick up that sound and hear and try to figure out where their potential next meal might be or what their environment kind of looks like. Now, we did get some folks saying that the baleen looks like sponge from very far away, and I could totally see that, right? So let's go on ahead and let's use our Elmo cam to be able to get a better view of that baleen, because it definitely doesn't do it justice looking at it from far away. I'm going to put my toothed whale skeleton down, and we're going to get a chance to look at our baleen. All right, so I'm going to grab my baleen. I'm going to turn on the light. Hello, here's my hand. I'm going to adjust the light a little bit so that way it's not shining so directly on our baleen here, but a little bit. I'm going to adjust the brightness of it. All right, and now I am going to zoom in. And there you can see these are actually all little bristles. Now, this stuff is actually made of the same thing that our fingernails are made out of, which is called keratin. So this feels very much like our fingernail. So if you ever want to know what baleen feels like, just feel your fingernail, and that's exactly it. Now, these bristly parts right here feel like really, really thick hair. And that's where they're able to capture and hold on to all of their food, all of their planktonic food. Now, the way that they're able to do this is really open their mouths up wide. Then they're able to close their mouth. That should have a lot of water and a lot of krill or plankton. And then from there, they're able to use their tongue to smush out all the water, and what's left and caught in all of these bristles are going to be that krill. Now, if you're wondering what krill looks like, I have a little part right here. So these are krill. They're little teeny tiny shrimp, because you can see they're a little bit almost like the size of my nail right here. And so these are the little shrimp that get caught in all of these bristles. Now, with that, we also have, they come in layers. So we have 1, 2 layers right here, and they just layer all on top of each other. If we look at a single piece of baleen, here's another piece. The bristles are a little bit longer on this one. This is just one thickness of that baleen. There you go. So hopefully that gives you a better idea now of how these baleen whales are actually able to filter out some of their food. The krill, right here. All right, well, we do have a lot of questions are coming in, so thank you for all those that have been asking them. Isaac is asking, do all whales echolocate? Now, that's actually just something that toothed whales happen to do. So remember, those toothed whales have 2, or we can only see 1 blowhole. I'll grab my skull here. I mean, they have 2 from the skeleton, but 1 is designated for that echolocation. And then what you actually see on the very top of them is just 1 blowhole. Now, this is a baleen whale. And so our baleen whales, they don't echolocate because they're filter feeders. They just open up their mouths, and they collect the food. They don't actually have to hunt and chase like our dolphins do, right? And so baleen whales use both of their blowholes. So that's why you see 2 here versus a dolphin that you would actually only see maybe 1 blowhole on. So hopefully, Isaac, that answers your question. There we go. We can kind of see the blowhole right there for our dolphins, right? So that other one is used for that melon to echolocate. Isaac also wants to know, do whales swim the same way that sharks do? That's a very interesting question. I'm going to put my skull down. Let's talk about that. All right, so maybe if we can go to Shark Lagoon, we can get a chance to see some of our sharks swim. But we have yet to really talk about our, almost lost my train of thought there. We can also go on ahead and talk a little bit about how whales swim. But let's look at our sharks first. Now, our sharks are considered cartilaginous fish, so they're different than our marine mammals. But I'm going to step out of the way for a second for you to be able to see some sharks. And so how do you notice that they swim? If you see their back tail fin or their caudal fin moving back and forth, that's how a lot of the sharks swim. Now, whales, I don't know if we have any whale footage that shows them actively swimming, but whales might use their tail fluke to be able to swim up and down. So there's more of an up and down motion versus sharks are a little bit more side to side. All right, so that's a good question. You know, a lot of scientists do compare different animals, and they're able to see what adaptations or what physical features and how they use them are similar, but also how they're different, right? So really appreciate how you're doing that as well. So here's a video of a whale. Let's see if we can see. This is a nice aerial or top view that we're seeing from up in the air. And we can see them. Yeah, there they go, right? They are diving deep, and they're using their fluke or their whale tail, right, to really push them down as they go deeper. So nice. Thanks, Gary. We also had a question of how long can whales stay underwater? Definitely depends on the kind of whale, right? Some of the whales, like the sperm whale, can dive down the longest up to 90 minutes. So that's a lot. Other ones, a lot less, maybe just up to, a handful of minutes. So it really depends on where they're feeding. Now for that sperm whale, if you remember that tooth that we have right here, right? This is one large tooth. And so they have to dive deep to eat their favorite food, which are some giant squid. So they have to really dive down deep to be able to hunt and try to find these elusive animals there. All right, and here's a picture of one that, of course, is at the very top. Almost looks like a really big log. And then it's going to eventually, slowly, because it's a large animal, it's going to bob a little bit, gets its several breaths, lots of air, and then it's going to dive deep and deep and deep for up to 90 minutes to be able to get its food, which is pretty cool. All right. Very cool watching it surface. All right. So we have an idea now of a little bit about different animals and how they're able to adapt, right, to their particular area. We had our baleen feeders that just opened up their mouth to be able to grab their food. And it's usually, like a lot of these krill or a lot of these animals all together. And then we have our other whales, like our sperm whales, that have to really do the complete opposite, right? They have to dive really deep to then be able to grab a lot of, or maybe a squid, right? Giant squids are kind of large, so they're not actually able to get a whole bunch of them. They'll be lucky if they can wrestle and eat one tasty squid. Now, one of the more common whales that we have off our coast is a gray whale. And gray whales, they eat a little bit differently than the active feeders, active hunters that are the sperm whales, or the more passive feeders that are the blue whales. They do actually have to try to find their krill. Gray whales, they eat a lot of critters that actually live in the mud. So amphipods are basically almost like little shrimpy-like animals, and they live in the mud. And so the way that the gray whale has adapted is to be able to take a chunk of the mud, as we see right here. That's a nice blow. Look at those two blowholes. So you can see some mud just coming right off of it right here. But what they do is they go down into the water, they take a bite of the mud, and they come up and they slowly use their tongue, just like the blue whales do, to press the water out. They press the mud out, and all that's left are all of those tasty mud critters. And so that's what they end up eating right there. Now, what's kind of interesting too is that these gray whales usually prefer a specific side. So some gray whales will either focus on eating the right-hand side, or maybe they'll eat from the left-hand side. Right? And so the way that you could tell if your whale prefers the right or the left is basically by seeing how smooth it might be on one of those sides. Now, smooth, what do you mean? What do you mean? Whales kind of look smooth in general, right? But our gray whales, if you notice during that feeding video, they have a lot of little bumps on them. And so those bumps are little barnacles. Now, these barnacles grow specifically on this kind of whale. So if you think that there's animals growing on a whale, do you think this whale goes very fast? No, not so much, right? So these whales, they focus mainly on eating on the sea floor, and so that really helps them. They don't really have to hunt very much. They can just take little bites here and there. And so these animals have advantageously grown on top of this whale right here. Now, what's really interesting is this variety of barnacle is only found on these kinds of whales. So it's pretty interesting to see some of those relationships that develop for this gray whale right here. Now got a question of how long do they live? Blue whales, we were talking about blue whales earlier, live anywhere between 80 to 90 years. And so that's how long they live. And then are there any endangered whales? Oh, that's a really good question. Yes. Most endangered cetaceans are going to be, or the whales in general are going to be the vaquita, and then also the right whale too. So I think maybe we can pull up a little picture of a vaquita. If you're not familiar with that one, basically it is a very small, almost like dolphin-like animal. And so it is mainly found in the Gulf of California, and it is unfortunately not really robust in numbers anymore. So this animal right here is about 5 foot in length, so it's pretty small. So that's the smallest one. And unfortunately, this animal loves to eat and swim around a fish called the totoaba. And the totoaba is supposedly a fairly wanted fish. And so a lot of fisher folk will go on ahead and use nets to catch those totoaba. And unfortunately, they end up catching some of these vaquita as well. And so their numbers have gone down significantly. So there aren't too many of these vaquita left. I don't recall the numbers. I think there are about 10 or so left. So yeah, so not too many. And part of the reason why we're like maybe 10 is because they're extremely shy. So these animals aren't really quite as, what's the word I'm looking for? Not very gregarious. So they're not really, showy, like let's just say some dolphin are, right? You see dolphin and they're jumping out of the water and they're coming next to boats and they're having a good time and they're using the water to be able to move. And, certain whales, we know that they travel back and forth off of our coast and we can see them. But these animals right here, they're really shy. They don't come around humans or boats all that often. And so folks that actively go on ahead and look and try to ID whales, like the sotoaba right here, toothed whale that is, they can't really find them and can't really see them all that much. Now, if you're wondering, well, how is it that you're actually able to identify these animals, right? Because many of them do live in the water. So like we saw that one video of the sperm whale, you can only see the very, very top, and it makes it really tricky. Now, we as scientists, as maybe marine mammal observers, have a wide variety of techniques that we use to be able to identify. Now, if you're scientists that maybe are on a boat and you have maybe something called a hydrophone, it's basically like an underwater microphone that you can stick in and you can take a listen in and see if you hear any particular whale noises. Each whale does have its own particular sound, and so you're able to kind of see and listen, or more like I should say listen in on what you hear. But something that's done a little bit more frequently is you're getting a chance to be an observer on a boat and you're watching and you're looking for whales, like activity, right? So some signs of activity that may mean like really good whales could be a lot of birds that are diving down into the water, right? So if you're out on the ocean, and you see a whole slew of birds that are diving into the water, that more than likely means there's a lot of fish in the area. And if there's a lot of fish, then more than likely there's a good chance that there might be some whales too, right? So we like to call that activity where there's a lot of fish in the water bait balls, because those smaller fish, are bait for a lot of larger animals like seals or sea lions, dolphins, potentially some whales, and of course birds, right? So it's pretty incredible to be able to see that. And so that's one good sign. Another way that we can tell if whales are around is depending upon the season. So some whales do migrate and we're able to kind of get a feel for maybe what kind of whale that we're seeing. Now, if we want to go on ahead and identify, a particular kind of whale, we can use different fluke patterns. So here we have a blue whale, and you can really see a really distinctive pattern. Maybe it was a propeller or something that went ahead and cut into this whale's fluke. But you can see that it has a very distinctive shape, right? All up and down here. And so looking at the shape or any kind of distinguishing characteristics allows you to be able to potentially say like, oh my goodness, I've seen that one before. We have some famous ones. So that's so-and-so, or that's number blah, blah, blah. Well, however the scientist or the community chooses to characterize and describe that particular whale. Another example could be instead of, because not all of them have little etchings on them, some of them might have distinct coloration patterns. So here we have a humpback whale, and you can see kind of like the white, the black outline with the white that's inside. Now, within the white pattern, you can see little marks as well, like little black marks, right? And so those two might be distinguishing characteristics that help you to be able to identify if you're able to catch that whale fluking in that particular way. Now, many of these whales also have dorsal fins too. So that little top fin that we might be really familiar with when we think about, let's just say like a classic dolphin, right? And so looking at those dorsal fins, or even an orca, right, has that really tall top fin. And so that's another way that we can also be able to identify different types of whales. All right. Looks like we have a few more questions of how long. Oh, I think we answered how long do they live. So about 80 to 90 years or so, but it really depends on the particular animal. And then Johnny's asking, are there any endangered whales? Ah, yes, we talked about that too. All right, so very nice. Just want to make sure that we're able to get to all of your questions. All right. Now, going back to these different patterns, we're able to utilize a lot of different things like binoculars that help us to be able to see, and then also cameras too. So scientists actually have a lot of these animals cataloged, so we're able to see, one, whether or not an individual frequency area, and we're able to get kind of like a temporal scale. So do they hang out here, like only mornings? Ah, there's a great picture of a dorsal fin right there. Do they hang out, during certain times of the day? Or maybe there's seasonal patterns as well, right? Do they only come around during certain seasons? And so those are some things that we can get a feel for by knowing what kind of whales we're seeing and particularly what individuals. Now, not only are we able to characterize, maybe take a look at their dorsal fin, and some of them may be a little bit more different than others, we can also take a look at the coloration too, because they definitely aren't always the same, right? So these are just some of the ways in which we can get a chance to identify and get a better idea of what kind of populations are out there. How many do we have? Do we have ones that are considered residential? Do we have other animals that might be the same that may be more oceanic, more out in the ocean instead of more coastal, more closer to shore? So those are some of the questions and the research that's being done and surveys that are being done to just get a feel for what our populations are like. I see we have a question from Able Artswork. How long does baleen get, and do they fall off? Yeah, because it looks a lot like hair, right? And it's made out of keratin, the same thing that our hair and our nails are made out of. So that does kind of beg the question. I don't think that they fall off, but they can get anywhere between 1.5 feet-ish all the way up to 11 feet. So I have another set of baleen that I can show you in at least relation to some of the smaller gray whale baleen I have. So just a second, and I'll bring that up. It's humpback whale or humpback baleen. So this is the humpback baleen that I have right here. It's a little bit larger than my forearm, and we have a lovely picture of a humpback right back there. But you can see within our picture earlier, right? I guess it's tricky to see in this light. But here we have this is what you would see on the outside of the whale, are just I'll maybe come up a little closer so you can see, are all of these, almost look like little files, right? If in a file cabinet. They're all each individual little pieces. Collectively, when you look at it on the inside of the mouth, it almost looks hairy, but we have all of these bristles again. Now, these bristles happen to be a little bit longer than our gray whale ones, but you can see kind of the differences between our humpback one, and I'll grab some of our gray whale. Now, gray whale baleen can get larger. This is just a smaller piece of that gray whale, but already you can kind of see some of that sizable difference between the two. So it's pretty interesting to be able to see the different kinds of baleen. All right, so unfortunately we are out of time. Definitely enjoyed chatting a little bit about whales with you all. So thank you for joining us. I think we have one more class that is coming, and we are going to be talking about, let's see if I can remember. Animal health care. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about how we take care of our animals here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, then join us and tune in at 2 o'clock for our last program of the day. And that is going to be on animal health care with Stacy. So it should be a good time. Definitely looking forward to seeing you then. Once again, if you do have any questions, please go on ahead and make sure you get a chance to email us at live@lbaop.org. In the meantime, thanks everyone for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.